George Robert Bob Newhart is an American stand-up comedian and actor. Noted for his deadpan and slightly stammering delivery, Newhart came to prominence in the 1960s when his album of comedic monologues The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart was a worldwide bestseller and reached #1 on the Billboard pop album chart. It remains the 20th best-selling comedy album in history. The follow-up album, The Button-Down Mind Strikes Back, was also a massive success, and the two albums held the Billboard #1 and #2 spots simultaneously. Newhart later went into acting, starring in two long-running and award-winning situation comedies, first as psychologist Dr. Robert Bob Hartley on the 1970s sitcom The Bob Newhart Show and then as innkeeper Dick Loudon on the 1980s sitcom Newhart. He also had two short-lived sitcoms in the 90s titled Bob and George and Leo. Newhart also appeared in film roles such as Major Major in Catch-22 and Papa Elf in Elf. He provided the voice of Bernard in the Walt Disney animated films The Rescuers and The Rescuers Down Under. In 2004 he played the library head Judson in The Librarian and again in 2006 and 2008. In 2011, Newhart made a cameo in the film Horrible Bosses, and in 2013 he guest-starred in 3 episodes of The Big Bang Theory, for one of which he won his first Primetime Emmy Award on September 15, 2013. Early life: Newhart was born and raised in Austin, Chicago, Illinois. His parents were Julia Pauline, a housewife, and George David Newhart, a part owner of a plumbing and heating supply business. His mother was of Irish descent and his father had Irish, German and English ancestry. One of his grandmothers was from St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Newhart has 3 sisters, Virginia, Mary Joan and Pauline. Newhart was educated at Roman Catholic schools in the Chicago area, including St. Catherine of Siena Grammar School in Oak Park, and attended St. Ignatius College Prep, graduating in 1947. He then enrolled at Loyola University of Chicago, from which he graduated in 1952 with a bachelor's degree in business management. Newhart was drafted into the United States Army and served in the United States during the Korean War as a personal manager until being discharged in 1954. Newhart briefly attended Loyola University Chicago's School of Law but did not complete a degree, in part, he says, because he was asked to behave unethically during an internship. Career: after the war, Newhart got a job as an accountant for United States Gypsum. He later claimed that his motto, "That's close enough," and his habit of adjusting petty cash imbalances with his own money shows he did not have the temperament to be an accountant. He also claimed to have been a clerk in the unemployment office who made $55 a week, but who quit upon learning weekly unemployment benefits were $45 a week and he only had to come into the office 1 day a week to collect it. Comedy albums: in 1958, Newhart became an advertising copywriter for Frederick A. Niles, a major independent film and television producer in Chicago. It was here that he and a co-worker would entertain each other with long telephone calls about absurd scenarios, which they would later record and send to radio stations as audition tapes. When his co-worker ended his participation, Newhart continued the recordings alone, developing the shtick which was to serve him well for decades. In addition to his various stand-up bits, he incorporated that shtick into his television series at appropriate times. The auditions led to his first recording contract. A disc jockey at a radio station, Dan Sorkin, who later became the announcer sidekick on his NBC series introduced Newhart to the head of talent at Warner Brothers Records, which signed him in 1959, only a year after the label was formed, based solely on those recordings. He expanded his material into a stand-up routine which he began to perform at nightclubs. Newhart became famous mostly on the strength of his audio releases, in which he became the world's first solo straight man. This is a seeming contradiction in terms. By definition, a straight man is the counterpart to a more loony comedic partner. Newhart's routine, however, was simply to portray one end of a conversation, playing the straightest of comedic straight men and implying what the other person was saying. Newhart told a 2005 interviewer for PBS's American Masters that his favorite stand-up routine is Abe Lincoln vs. Madison Avenue, in which a slick promoter has to deal with the reluctance of the eccentric president to agree to efforts to boost his image. The routine was suggested to Newhart by Chicago TV director and future comedian Bill Daly, who would be Newhart's castmate on the 1970s The Bob Newhart Show for CBS. Newhart became known for using an intentional stammer, in service to his unique combination of politeness and disbelief at what he was supposedly hearing. Newhart has used the delivery throughout his career. In his 2006 book I Shouldn't Even Be Doing This, he included the following anecdote. When I was doing the Bob Newhart Show, one of the producers pulled me aside and said that the shows were running a little long. He wondered if I could cut down the time of my speeches by reducing my stammering. No, that stammer bought me a house in Beverly Hills. His 1960 comedy album, The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, went straight to #1 on the charts, beating Elvis Presley in the cast album of The Sound of Music. It was the first comedy album to make #1 on the Billboard charts. Button-Down Mind received the 1961 Grammy Award for Album of the Year. The album peaked at #2 in the UK Albums chart. Newhart also won Best New Artist, and his quickly released follow-up album, The Button-Down Mind Strikes Back, won Best Comedy Performance, Spoken Word that same year. Subsequent comedy albums include Behind the Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, The Button-Down Mind on TV, Bob Newhart Faces Bob Newhart, The Windmills Are Weakening, This Is It, Best of Bob Newhart, and Very Funny Bob Newhart. Years later he released Bob Newhart Off the Record, The Button-Down Concert and Something Like This, an anthology of his 1960s Warner Brothers albums. Television. Newhart's success in stand-up led to his own NBC variety show in 1961, The Bob Newhart Show. The show lasted only a single season, but earned Newhart a Primetime Emmy Award nomination and a Peabody Award. The Peabody Board cited him as a person whose gentle satire and rhymed irreverent wit waft a breath of fresh and bracing air through the stale and stuffy electronic corridors. A merry marauder, who looks less like St. George than a choir boy. Newhart has wounded, if not slain, many of the dragons that stalk our society. In a troubled and apprehensive world, Newhart has proved once again that laughter is the best medicine. In the mid-1960s, Newhart appeared on The Dean Martin Show 24 times, and on The Ed Sullivan Show 8 times. He appeared in a 1963 episode of The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, How to Get Rid of Your Wife, and on The Judy Garland Show. Newhart guest hosted The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson 87 times, and hosted Saturday Night Live twice, 15 years apart. In addition to stand-up comedy, Newhart became a dedicated character actor. That led to other series such as, Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theatre, Captain Nice, 2 episodes of Insight, and It's Gary Shandling's Show. He reprised his role as Dr. Bob Hartley on Murphy Brown and appeared as himself on The Simpsons, and as a retired forensic pathologist on NCIS. Newhart guest starred on 3 episodes of ER, for which he was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award, as well as on Desperate Housewives. In 2013 he also appeared on Committed and appeared in an episode of the 6th season of The Big Bang Theory, for which he was awarded a Primetime Emmy Award, and several episodes of the 7th season. Films. Primarily a television star, Newhart has been in a number of popular films, beginning with the 1962 war story Hell is for Heroes starring Steve McQueen. His films have ranged from 1970s Barbra Streisand musical On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, the 1971 Norman Lear comedy Cold Turkey, the Mike Nichols-directed war satire Catch-22, to the 2003 Will Ferrell holiday comedy Elf. Newhart played the President of the United States in a 1980 comedy, First Family. He appeared as a beleaguered school principal in 1997's In and Out, starring Kevin Kline. In 2011 he made a cameo appearance as a sadistic CEO at the end of the film Horrible Bosses. Sitcoms, The Bob Newhart Show. Newhart's most notable exposure on television came from 2 long-running programs that centered on him. In 1972, soon after Newhart guest-starred on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, he was approached by his agent and his managers, producer Grant Tinker and actress Mary Tyler Moore, to work on a pilot series called The Bob Newhart Show, to be written by Davis and music. He was very interested in the starring role of dry psychologist Bob Hartley, with Suzanne Pleshette playing his wry-loving wife, Emily, and Bill Daly as neighbor and friend Howard Borden. The Bob Newhart Show faced heavy competition from the beginning, launching at the same time as the popular shows MASH, Maude, Sanford and Son, and The Waltons. Nevertheless, it was an immediate hit. The show eventually referenced what made Newhart's name in the first place. Apart from the first few episodes, it used an opening credits sequence featuring Newhart answering a telephone in his office. According to co-star Marcia Wallace, the entire cast got along well, and Newhart became close friends with both Wallace and co-star Suzanne Pleshette. The cast also included unfamiliar actors, Marcia Wallace as Bob's wisecracking, man-chasing receptionist, Carol Kester. Peter Bonerz as orthodontist Jerry Robinson, whose offices were on the same floor as Newhart's Hartley. Jack Riley as Elliot Carlin, the most misanthropic among members of Dr. Hartley's most frequently seen group therapy sessions. Legendary character actor and voice artist, John Fiedler. Florida Friebus as another group member. And, scattered over 2 seasons, Pat Finley as Hartley's sister, Ellen, a love interest for Howard Borden. Future Newhart regular Tom Poston had a briefly recurring role as Cliff Murdoch. Veteran stage actor Barnard Hughes appeared as Hartley's father for 3 episodes spread over 2 seasons, and studio film veteran Martha Scott appeared in several episodes as Hartley's mother. Actress Terry Garr appeared twice in the 1973-74 season. By 1977, the show was suffering lackluster ratings and Newhart wanted to end it, but was under contract to do 1 more season. The show's writers tried to rework the sitcom by adding a pregnancy, but Newhart objected. "I told the creators I didn't want any children, because I didn't want it to be a show about how stupid Daddy is, but we love him so much, let's get him out of the trouble he's gotten himself into." Nevertheless, the staff wrote an episode that they hoped would change Newhart's mind. Newhart read the script and he agreed it was very funny. He then asked, "Who are you going to get to play Bob?" Coincidentally, Newhart's wife gave birth to their daughter Jenny late in the year, which caused him to miss several episodes. In the last episode of the 5th season, not only was Bob's wife, Emily, pregnant, but his receptionist, Carol too. In the first show of the 6th season, Bob revealed his dream of the pregnancies and that neither Emily nor Carol were really pregnant. Marcia Wallace spoke of Newhart's amiable nature on set. "He's very low-key, and he didn't want to cause trouble. I had a dog that I used to bring to the set by the name of Maggie. And whenever there was a line that Bob didn't like he didn't want to complain too much so, he'd go over, get down on his hands and knees, and repeat the line to the dog, who invariably yawned. And he'd say, 'See, I told you it's not funny.'" Wallace has also commented on the show's lack of Emmy recognition. "People think we were nominated for many an Emmy, people presume we won Emmys, all of us, and certainly Bob, and certainly the show. Nope, never." Newhart finally pulled the plug on the sitcom in 1978 after 6 seasons and 142 episodes. Wallace said of its ending, "It was much crying and sobbing. It was so sad. We really did get along. We really had great times together." Of Newhart's other long-running sitcom, Newhart, Wallace said, "But some of the other great comedic talents who had a brilliant show, when they tried to do it twice, it didn't always work. And that's what. But like Bob, as far as I'm concerned, Bob is like the Fred Astaire of comics. He just makes it look so easy, and he's not as in your face as some might be. And so, you just kind of take it for granted, how extraordinarily funny and how he wears well." She was later reunited with Newhart twice, once in a reprise of her role as Carol on Murphy Brown in 1994, and on an episode of Newhart's short-lived sitcom, George and Leo, in 1997. Newhart. By 1982, Newhart was interested in a new sitcom. After he had discussions with Barry Kemp and CBS, the show Newhart was created, in which Newhart played Vermont innkeeper Dick Loudon. Actress Mary Fran was cast as his wife, Joanna Loudon, and another unfamiliar primetime actress and soap star, Julia Duffy joined the cast as Dixon Maiden's spoiled rich girl, Stephanie Vanderkellen. A familiar actor, Peter Scolari was also cast as Dick's manipulative TV producer, Michael Harris, in 6 of the 8 seasons. Well-known actor Tom Poston played the role of handyman George Utley on Newhart, and received 3 Primetime Emmy Award nominations for his role in Newhart as Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series, 1984, 1986 and 1987. Like The Bob Newhart Show, Newhart was an immediate hit, and like the show before it, it was also nominated for Primetime Emmy Awards, but failed to win any. During the time Newhart was working on the show, in 1985, his smoking habits finally caught up to him, and he was taken to the emergency room for polycythemia. The doctors ordered him to stop smoking. In 1987, ratings began to drop. Newhart ended in 1990 after 8 seasons and 182 episodes. The last episode ended with a scene in which Newhart wakes up in bed with Suzanne Pleshette, who had played Emily, his wife from The Bob Newhart Show. He realizes that the entire 8-year Newhart series had been a single nightmare of Dr. Bob Hartley's, provoked by eating too much Japanese food before going to bed. Recalling Mary Fran's buxom figure, Bob closes the segment and the series by telling Emily, "You really should wear more sweaters," before the typical closing notes of the old Bob Newhart Show theme played over the fade-out. The twist ending was later chosen by TV Guide as the best finale in television history. Other TV series. In 1992, Newhart returned to television with a series called Bob, about a cartoonist. An ensemble cast included a pre-Friends Lisa Kudrow, but the show did not develop a strong audience and was cancelled shortly after the start of his second season, despite good critical reviews. In 1997, Newhart returned again with George and Leo on CBS with Judd Hirsch and Jason Bateman. The show was cancelled during its first season. Other TV appearances. In 2001, Newhart made an appearance on MAD-TV, playing a psychiatrist who yells "Stop it!" in a skit. Other television work includes The Entertainers, Thursday's Game, Marathon, Ladies and Gentlemen. Bob Newhart, Ladies and Gentlemen. Bob Newhart Part 2, The Entertainers, The Simpsons, Season 7, Bart the Fink, The Sports Pages, The Librarian, Quest for the Spear, The Librarian, Return to King Solomon's Mines, The Librarian, Curse of the Judas Chalice, NCIS, Season 8, Recruited, 5, Dr. Oz, The Big Bang Theory, Season 6, The Proton Resurgence, The Big Bang Theory, Season 7, The Proton Displacement, The Big Bang Theory, Season 7, The Proton Transmogrification. In 1995, a 65-year-old Newhart was approached by the Showtime cable network to do his very first comedy special in his 35-year career. His special Off the Record consisted of him doing material from his first and second albums in front of a live audience in Pasadena, California. In 2003, Newhart guest-starred on 3 episodes of ER in a rare dramatic role that earned him a Primetime Emmy Award nomination, his first in nearly 20 years. In 2005, he began a recurring role in Desperate Housewives as Morty, the on-again off-again boyfriend of Sophie, Susan Mayer's mother. In 2009, he received another Primetime Emmy Award nomination for reprising his role as Judson in The Librarian, Curse of the Judas Chalice. On the August 27, 2006, at the 58th Primetime Emmy Awards, hosted by Conan O'Brien, Newhart was placed in a supposedly airtight glass prison that contained 3 hours of air. If the Emmys went over the time of 3 hours, he would die. This gag was an acknowledgement of the common frustration that award shows usually run on past their allotted time. Newhart survived his containment to help O'Brien present the award for Outstanding Comedy Series. During an episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live, Newhart made a comedic cameo with members of ABC's show Lost, lampooning an alternate ending to the series finale. In 2011, Newhart appeared in a small but pivotal role as a doctor in Lifetime's anthology film on breast cancer 5. And, in 2013, he made a guest appearance on The Big Bang Theory as the aged Professor Proton, a former science TV show host turned children's party entertainer, for which he won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series, his first Emmy Award. Personal comedic style. Newhart is known for his deadpan delivery and a slight stammer which early on he incorporated into the persona around which he built a successful career. On his TV shows, although he got his share of funny lines, often he worked in the Jack Benny tradition of being the straight man while the sometimes somewhat bizarre cast members surrounding him got the laughs. Several of his routines involve hearing one half of a conversation as he speaks to someone over the phone. In a bit called King Kong, a rookie security guard at the Empire State Building seeks guidance as to how to deal with an ape who is 18 to 19 stories high, depending on whether we have a 13th floor or not. He assures his boss he has looked in the guard's manual under Ape and Ape's Toes. Other famous routines include the driving instructor, the Mrs. Grace L. Ferguson airline, introducing tobacco to civilization, Abe Lincoln vs. Madison Avenue, defusing a bomb, the retirement party, a neighbor's dog, ledge psychology, and the Khrushchev landing rehearsal. In a 2012 podcast interview with Marc Maron, comedian Shelley Berman accused Newhart of ripping off his improvisational telephone routine style, describing it as a very special technique that couldn't really be imitated. It could be stolen. And it was. When asked by Maron if it was done maliciously, Berman replied, "Maliciously? He wouldn't do it maliciously. Nobody does that. But he did it to make a living. And he became a star." Berman later added, "I thought it was a rotten thing to do. I thought the agents who sold him, I thought they were just as guilty as everybody else. But, my God, to go into a town and do my show, and the critics saying that I borrowed some stuff from Newhart." In interviews, Newhart has never taken credit for originating the telephone concept, which he has noted was done earlier by Berman in Nichols and May, and earlier than that by George Jessel in his well-known sketch Hello Mama, and even earlier in the 1913 recording Cohen on the Telephone. And would later be done by Lily Tomlin as well. Writings: on September 20, 2006, Hyperion Books released Newhart's first book, I Shouldn't Even Be Doing This. The book is primarily a memoir, but features comic bits by Newhart as well. Transcripts of many of Newhart's classic routines are woven in with the rest of the text. As actor David Hyde Pierce notes, the only difference between Bob Newhart on stage and Bob Newhart off stage is that there is no stage. Honors: in addition to his Peabody Award and several Primetime Emmy Award nominations, Newhart's recognitions include 3 Grammy Awards in 1961, Best New Artist, Album of the Year for The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, and Best Comedy Performance for The Button-Down Mind Strikes Back. In 1993, Newhart was inducted into the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame. In 1996, Newhart was ranked number 17 on TV Guide's 50 Greatest TV Stars of All Time list. In 1998, Billboard magazine recognized Newhart's first album as number 20 on their list of most popular albums of the past 40 years, and the only comedy album on the list. On January 6, 1999, Newhart received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In 2002, Newhart won the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. In 2004, Newhart was named number 14 on Comedy Central Presents 100 Greatest Stand-Ups of All Time. On July 27, 2004, American cable television network TV Land unveiled a life-sized statue of Newhart on the Magnificent Mile in his native Chicago, depicting Dr. Robert Hartley from The Bob Newhart Show. The statues depict Dr. Hartley sitting in his therapy practice chair with a pencil held between his hands, and a patient sofa next to him. After an initial temporary installation in front of 430 North Michigan Avenue, the building used for exterior establishing shots of Hartley's office, the bronze set is now permanently located in the Sculpture Park in front of Chicago's Navy Pier Entertainment Complex. Visitors routinely sit on the couch and pose for photographs as Bob's patients. On October 17, 2012, Loyola University Chicago honored him by naming their new theater, the Newhart Family Theater. On September 15, 2013, Newhart won his first Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series for his portrayal of Professor Proton on The Big Bang Theory. Personal life: Newhart was introduced by Buddy Hackett to Virginia Guinea Quinn, the daughter of character actor Bill Quinn. They were married on January 12, 1963. The couple have 4 children, and several grandchildren. They are Catholic and raised their children as such, but Guinness said they did not want them to have the fears that came from their upbringing. He is a member of the Good Shepherd Parish and the Catholic Motion Picture Guild in Beverly Hills, California. His son Rob maintains his father's official website. Newhart's best friend is comedian Don Rickles, who nicknamed him Charlie Everybody for his everyman persona. In 1985, Newhart was rushed to the emergency room, suffering with polycythemia, after years of heavy smoking. He made a recovery, several weeks after, and has since quit smoking. Filmography: Hell is for Heroes, a World War II drama with a comedic monologue by Newhart, Hot Millions, On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, Catch-22, Cold Turkey, The Rescuers, Little Miss Marker, First Family, The Rescuers Down Under, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, The Movie, In and Out, Legally Blonde 2, Red, White and Blonde, Elf, The Librarian, Quest for the Spear, The Librarian, Return to King Solomon's Mines, The Librarian, Curse of the Judas Chalice, Horrible Bosses, The Big Bang Theory episode, The Proton Resurgence, References. Further reading: Newhart, Bob. I Shouldn't Even Be Doing This. New York, Hyperion PPA 256p. ISBN A1-4013-0246-7. Mayerly, Judin. The Most Inconspicuous Hit on Television, A Case Study of Newhart. Washington, D.C. Journal of Popular Film and Television. Sorensen, Jeff. Bob Newhart. New York, St. Martin's. Riley, Rick. Who's Your Caddy? Looping for the Great, Near Great, and Reprobates of Golfer. External links. Official website: Bob Newhart at the Internet Movie Database. Bob Newhart on National Public Radio in 2001, Bob Newhart profile from American Masters, Bob Newhart interview video at the Archive of American Television, Bob, The Last Interview, Bob Newhart 4-part interview with Horace J. Digby on A3 Radio.